Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Southern Lehigh School Board meeting. We appreciate your patience. Sorry we were running a little bit late. So we're calling the meeting to order. We have several board members who are not in attendance this evening. Mrs. Desai, Dr. Serene, Mrs. Gaiman, and Mrs. Gangware. I'd also, so I am the substitute president this evening. So we have two new faces up here this evening, myself, and I'd like to welcome Dr. Larry Musseline. He's our new interim superintendent at Southern Lehigh. Larry comes to us with 21 years of experience as a superintendent, including 8 years at Downingtown, and most recently at Haddonfield in New Jersey. So he also has experience as a building principal, a teacher, and a coach. So he has a wealth of experience to bring to our district, and we are thrilled to have him here, and we're grateful for your leadership.
Thank you. Okay, there we go. It's a wonderful district. You all live in a wonderful community. When you get together, let me tell you, the sky is the limit. I can see that in your admin team and in your teachers. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thanks for having me, even if it's for a short time.
We're grateful for your leadership and glad you're here with us. So we'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance and then get started.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, Mr. Audi, if you could just announce our executive sessions.
Yes, before we commence, I would like to say that the board met in executive session immediately prior to our attending here, starting at 7 o'clock, to discuss primarily personnel and safety, school safety matters.
We did have an exec after the last meeting. Does that need to be added on June 14th?
We announced, I believe, at the conclusion of the last meeting that we were going to have one, okay. But in fact we did, and it was for personnel.
Great, thank you. Okay, so moving on to number 2, visitor comments. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Comments are to provide input to the board on items that are before us to vote. Speakers must be district residents and sign in. Because this is a business meeting, there's not a back and forth in terms of a response. We will try to address to the extent possible items in the superintendent report, and we ask that all comments be directed to the board and not the audience, and refrain from use of offensive language. So we'll start with the first person. We have William Schindler, I'm sorry.
Thank you. My name is William Schindler. Lots love to read. I'm the father of 2 students in the district. I'm a private person. I've never spoken at a school board meeting. I really don't want to be here now. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I assume good intentions, and I teach my children to do the same. When I received the email from Dr. Evison in April about the survey relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I became concerned that I wanted to know why the survey was needed and how the results would be used. I emailed Dr. Evison in late April. I asked a series of simple questions. She artfully dodged every single question. Despite follow-ups, I don't have a single answer to any of my questions. Even subsequent communications with the board resulted in a polite but perfunctory response with no engagement on the substance of the issues, which was obviously disappointing. The lack of transparency from the outset was disappointing. A call for transparency is the heart of my comments tonight. I filed a request for records under our right to know law in Pennsylvania. Among other things, I asked for records of interactions with Dr. Allen, evidence that the district had considered any other alternatives or approaches, and whether the district had considered things like whether the professional training proposed by Dr. Allen and approved by this board would violate our existing policies by inadvertently creating a racially hostile work environment for our teachers and staff. When the district responded, I was troubled to see that they had decided to withhold basically everything that I had requested. They did so under various exceptions, which I believe were improperly applied. The bigger issue, though, is that the school district could have opted for openness, for transparency, but instead decided to maintain a thick veil of secrecy around everything related to this topic. Even board members can't see what's being proposed by Dr. Howard. On my request for records showing how the district defines equity, everything was withheld. The district is sending out equity surveys, uses the word equity in all of our handbooks, has hired a consultant to help us on equity, and operates an equity committee for at least the past 5 years, and refuses to tell us what equity means. How is that acceptable? How is that transparent? How are we supposed to trust? Further, the district refused to disclose even a single document relating to that equity committee. Not a single one, nor its activities, nor its recommendations. Why? Why? I taught my daughters a very simple lesson. If you have to hide what you're doing, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Our administration clearly doesn't understand this. Our board should opt for openness, for open and honest discussions on these topics with full transparency on all underlying documents and activities. How can the community have confidence in this board when it allows the administration to hide relevant information from public view? That's my time. Thank you, and I certainly hope somebody's recording this tonight so our missing board members can hear. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jill Hedges.
Good evening. My name is Jill Hedges, and I have lived in Upper Saucon Township for 17 years. My 3 children will be entering 8th, 5th, and 2nd grades. I would like to start by requesting that meetings be recorded and archived, because please stop tabling items like this and putting them off as decisions to be made later. I don't work within the normal business hours, and if I'm scheduled to work on a Monday, I miss the meetings. Community members should not be left in the dark due to their schedule conflicts. I'm here to speak up about my disappointment in the lack of decision-making regarding mask requirements for the upcoming school year. My 3 children were fully virtual this past year, not due to fear of a virus, but due to my belief that children should not be wearing masks for extended periods of time. Children are typically rule followers by nature and will do what is requested of them. Please don't mistake this trait of compliance for acceptance. By the start of next school year, everyone 12 and over will have had the opportunity to be fully vaccinated if they choose to. Combine that with the mask mandate being lifted today, June 28th, for everyone in Pennsylvania, vaccinated or not, and there is no reason we should still be requiring masks of our children. For anyone that still feels unsafe, they have the option to continue with mask wearing or to choose one of the many CIR options out there. You seem to be waiting for guidelines from government agencies. But why can't educated decisions be made? Why can't you look at the data within our county and our district to see that the risks are down? Why can't we make choices for our kids that are best for their mental health? I know of many families, mine included, that have battled these invisible fights. It was a rough year for so many of us. On June 11th, the acting deputy secretary of the Department of Education, Dr. Sherry Smith, sent an email stating, I quote, "After the order ends, local education agencies will have the authority to determine their own masking policy," end quote. That's right, we're given the authority to make our own policies. If the delay on making the decision is about receiving federal funding, according to the recent Senate Education Committee public hearing on June 22nd, the now acting Secretary of the Department of Education, Mr. Ortega, said that the health and safety plan needs to be submitted, but will not be reviewed. The Department of Education will not deny any funding if guidelines are not followed exactly. If it's about money, then maybe we need more people to be vocal and legitimately threaten to pull our kids out of district along with their funding and take it to a charter school. I'll take my 3 kids and their $45,000 to a well-established cyber school before I force them to wear masks unnecessarily. Make masks optional for students and let our children breathe.
Good evening. I am speaking tonight in hopes that you will abandon universal masking and make it optional. I also encourage you to make the return to full-time learning as normal as possible. Put simply, my children do not feel like themselves in a mask. Once that mask went on, they entered some sort of alternate version of themselves. Our participation in the hybrid model was not an endorsement of the protocol you set in place. We did it in spite of it because my kids needed social interaction along with a quality education. My children are not the only ones affected by masks, the repercussions of which will be felt for many years to come. What we know today is that vaccines are incredibly effective, even against the new Delta variant. They are available to anyone who wants to get one. If one doesn't want to get the vaccine or wear a mask, that's a personal decision and should be left up to the family or individual. It is not the burden of the school. We also have clarification from PDE Secretary Ortega that ARP funds are not tied to the school district following the CDC guidelines. My youngest children attend kindergarten at a private school without any disruptions this past year and are by far the least negatively affected of our 5 children. We have another pair of twin girls now entering 5th grade, and our son is entering 8th. Initially, they were happy to get back to school, but the novelty wore off quickly. Why, you ask? All of it. The way the classrooms were set up, the 13-minute recess, cafeteria procedures, a middle school gym invaded by lunch desks. They worried each day that they could be removed from class if they were deemed a close contact. These are examples of protocols that should be tossed aside. Attending school should not be an emotionally difficult one. I do not feel that these protocols bear repeating for the upcoming school year. My family has arrived at a place that I never dreamed of. How heartbreaking it is to have my children ask permission to approach or show emotion towards another person. Kids need to play together, give high fives, see smiles, laugh together, and hug one another without fear of a consequence. We need to get kids singing again, playing their instruments with live performances. We need theater productions back with audiences and unmasked sports with spectators. Back in November, one of my children sent themselves an email while they were physically present at school. It read, "Don't give up, stay strong and positive, never give up, you can do it." This summer is going to be about restoration and repair for my children. They are already asking questions about the upcoming school year and are worried what it might look like. You have the power to change things for the better. Please, keep moving forward. Be the school board that commits to positive change. Let the parents have the authority to choose for their children whether to mask or not. And let's get back to normal. Thank you.
Next speaker is Jennifer Wrigley.
Thank you for your time. My name is Jennifer Wrigley. I'm a parent with 3 children in the district. We started off this year in the hybrid model and soon moved to virtual after experiencing wearing masks for the 7 hours. This was very challenging for all 3 of my children, and even though being fully virtual was very challenging, it was better than wearing the masks. So I'm here today to ask the Southern Lehigh School District to have masks optional for the 2021-2022 school year. As a community and as a board, we owe it to not only our children and our students, but also our teachers, our faculty, and our staff to allow families to choose if they want to wear a mask or not to wear a mask. We have low cases, we have availability for vaccines. Our children are spending time with families, they are traveling, they're at camps, and they're at play dates without masks. I want my children to be able to come to school to learn, and I want them to be able to breathe. Our district is in a different place than we were last school year. Please let our families decide. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Paul Diebel.
It's wonderful to look out here and see all those smiling faces here tonight. Well, with the state of Pennsylvania lifting the universal masking order today, I'm glad to see the administration has gone along with that guidance and finally removed the masking requirement for now for Southern Lehigh, especially for our kids practicing this summer in the heat. We've seen over the last few months the masks generally disappear from the public, whether it's stores, restaurants, sporting events, and so on. Yet thanks to the vaccination rates, the rate of spread has continued to drop significantly. Our children are going unmasked almost everywhere outside of school. So at this point, masking at school doesn't make a difference. What concerns me is the recent rescue plan stakeholder survey that was emailed to us after the last meeting, with the results I assume to be discussed today. I'm concerned with the way the survey was structured to focus on money rather than on what the real issue is here, freeing our children from the masks. While additional federal funding would be great to receive, it is not going to the bottom line to increase teachers' salaries or to reduce the burden on taxpayers. And by pursuing the ESSER funding, it requires the district to follow requirements established by the state or federal government to receive this funding, taking control away from our local community. Over the last year plus, the actions of this board and this administration have been to follow the edicts from the state and the federal government rather than listening to the residents of Southern Lehigh. As board members, you are elected to represent us, the parents and the taxpayers of the district, not to blindly follow the governor's guidance. Buried deep in the survey was one question that truly mattered. Are we going to sell out our children to get more federal funding, or are we going to listen to the families in our district? Hundreds of school boards statewide have voted to take control over masking requirements themselves, including locally Pa.C.S, Penridge, and Central Bucks. I encourage this board tonight to finally take a stand to no longer hold our students hostage to federal funding and reject the health and safety plan proposed, and to specifically bring forth a motion to remove all masking requirements for Southern Lehigh henceforth. Thank you.
I am here as a parent and a taxpayer to speak against the introduction of critical race theory in our schools. You say we do not have critical race theory in our schools, but you do have a diversity, equity, and inclusion proposal. These are the buzzwords of critical race theory. I will ask you a few questions, the answer to which will tell us whether or not our district is on the path to adopting critical race theory in our schools. Do you believe any of the following concepts? Have you hired or contracted consultants who will be promoting any of these concepts to our school, to our staff? Are any of these concepts integrated in any of the curricula? Here are the three concepts. 1, there's no absolute truth. 2, individuals are either an oppressor or victim. 3, America is systemically racist and must be dismantled. If any of these concepts are accepted and integrated in our schools, that is critical race theory. The superintendent obviously believes in these concepts, as she brought Dr. Allen's proposal to this board for approval. The proposal is clear. It includes staff training with all the buzzwords associated with CRT, like racial equity, social justice, oppression, marginalized identities, systemic racism, and implicit bias. What I don't know yet is whether this board fully appreciated what was in the proposal they approved. But given this board's failure to stop work under this proposal for further discussion makes it harder and harder to believe it did not know what it was doing. Mrs. Evison and Dr. Mussolini are members of the Greater Lehigh Valley chapter of the Delaware Valley Consortium for Equity and Excellence. Equity, there's the buzzword again. We know full well where Superintendent Evison stands on these issues. She made that very clear by bringing Dr. Allen's proposal to the board. What we don't know is where Dr. Mussolini stands on this issue. We need to hear that. We need to know whether Dr. Mussolini believes that training and other services under Dr. Allen's proposal, based as they are on highly disputed and controversial premises, are appropriate for the school district. According to an email dated October 16, 2020, Mrs. Evison to a community member, Mrs. Evison stated, the proposal was brought forward as an administrative recommendation based on the needs of the district. Our needs were established based on student, staff, and community feedback, recorded incidences, and the need for all districts to ensure a focus on equity for all students. If that was the case, then why would a subsequent survey be needed at all? The answer is simple, it isn't. And that's why the proposal covers multiple activities right from the start, including the training and the creation of the 3-year action plan. We do not want our children to be taught they are oppressed or oppressors by virtue of their color. We do not want our children to be taught that America is systemically racist. We will not be silenced. We will stand firm against anti-academic and anti-American content in our schools. For the third time now, I respectfully again request that the school board and Dr. Mussolini move to terminate Joseph Allen's proposal and immediately cease all activity associated with the proposal. In addition, I request that no policy and no proposal pertaining to equity or CRT ever be implemented at Southern Lehigh.
Good evening. Mr. Interim Superintendent, if you are the same gentleman that was part of the BNL versus Mahoney Area School District, I request your immediate resignation. If you can't stand up for those kids' constitutional rights, we don't have time to babysit you with what we're dealing with in this school district. We are dealing with critical race theory. We are dealing with masking. We are dealing with our children not being in school 5 days a week, which is unacceptable. There is no reason these kids can't be in school 5 days a week. None. There is no reason the kids need to wear masks. This disease does not affect them that way. The CDC said so. Nobody's listening. Do not force the kids to get vaccinated. Or if you're not vaccinated, you can't take your mask off. That is unacceptable. Secondly, this critical race theory nonsense that you are shoving down our throats. I pulled this off of the Pennsylvania School District website. Equity Communications Guidance, stemming from the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis and other violence towards Black men and women. I'm appalled by what is in this paper that you all read, that is distributed by Pennsylvania School Board. It's ridiculous to say, speak how systemic racism affects children from an early age. There's no systemic racism. There's bias. Sure, everybody has some. But this is what's causing these issues. This paperwork. In this paperwork, it says phrases to consider and to avoid using. Avoid equality. Avoid minorities, minority students. Avoid all lives matter. Seriously? Avoid the word riots. Because, yeah, what happened in Portland was peaceful protesting. Let's use these words according to the Pennsylvania School Board. Equity, diversity, inclusion, systemic racism, anti-racism, Black Lives Matter. Unacceptable. Completely and totally unacceptable. These are not what my kids and my grandkids come to this school for. My kids come here to learn how to read, write, do math. They want to know actual history, not made up stuff.
Next speaker is Sandra Miller.
For hearing this tonight. I didn't come with a prepared speech because I've never been to one of these things, but I am here because I am concerned about the critical race theory that we are coming to the school district. I had 4 children in this school district, and we pulled our daughter out last year with a lot of concerns, and we're really thankful that she was able to go to a private school this year and be able to go to classrooms every day. But I am very concerned about the critical race theory that is being considered about being taught here. Because the critical race theory, their major tenet is that people in the world are divided as oppressors or the oppressed, and that all white people are considered oppressors. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous to teach in the school district, I think.
Could you pay attention,
Could you
please?
pay attention, please? You've done this several times. As a school board member, can't you give everybody who speaks an opportunity? Full respect.
I apologize. No disrespect was intended.
I don't believe that. I think it's just.
We're not going to have people shouting out. Excuse me, if there's any more shouting out, we'll stop the meeting.
Oh my gosh. The meeting they have the board show
If you'd
up.
like to continue your comments, you may do so. Please continue. I do apologize. Genuinely, there was no disrespect, and I'm sorry, especially since it's your first meeting. So that was not our intent. I do apologize. I can see that it may have appeared that way, but I would respectfully request refraining from the audience commentary.
I just was going to say that whites are deemed guilty of having set up a system of systemic racism and the demonization of a group of people because of the color of their skin is something that is discriminatory. And I'm really disgusted that the school board would be involved with Black Lives Matter. I mean, lives matter, and if you have to put a color in front of that sentence, you are discriminating.
He doesn't want to speak.
Next speaker is Julie Nye.
Hi, good evening. My name is Julie Nay. I've been a taxpayer in the school district since 2000. Two of my children had attended the Southern Lehigh Middle School and High School. In July of 2020, due to COVID crisis rise in cities and political chaos, I decided to see how the school district was responding. Here I discovered the diversity program that was proposed and approved at the same meeting on June 22nd, 2020. I found it odd that this was being proposed during crisis and lockdown and could not imagine that many parents or community members were aware. Hence, I've been requesting information from the school district for right to know. I have also written to the superintendent and the school board with inquiries and have not been able to get answers on critical matters and am disturbed by the following. With respect to the diversity proposal, also known as critical race theory, in August 2020, the school board said they are in the data gathering and planning phase of this proposal. However, the June 22nd, 2020 school board vote allows it to become part of the curriculum. And the invoice says assessment to provide recommendations regarding district policy, practice, and protocol over a 3-year period. The proposal objective states to assist staff in developing culturally relevant, sustaining pedagogical practices. Not sure what that means, but you do not already have protocols in place to respond to cultural differences or unacceptable behavior. Also, no one mentioned to me the climate survey at this time. Why not? In November 2020, when I asked for copies of the modules through Right to Know, the response was, the details of the modules to be implemented will be shared with the board once the needs assessment is done. So 8 of 9 board members voted yes for something they have not seen that is such a critical matter. Mr. Dimming was promised to be provided with these modules. Did you ever receive them? June 2nd, 2021, I submitted another right to know asking for these modules after Kathleen Edison mentioned it at a May board meeting. This time I sent an outline from the proposal. Sorry,
An outline does not suffice for curriculum modules. Why do we have to wait until an assessment is complete to see modules that already exist? Why do we not have a right to know what will be taught? We are paying for this. I also asked the school district if parents and community can attend the diversity training. I was told no, it is only for administration. August 25th, 2020, I wrote a letter to the school board to ask what the terms diversity, inclusion, and equity services mean. No one has answered these questions. Through Right to Know, I asked what problems were occurring in the school district to prompt a need for this program. What type of reports exist? The school district will not provide documentation based on exceptions under the Right to Know law. Regarding the school board meeting for the diversity program, the agenda says University of North Carolina, Charlotte. However, it is really coming from an independent contractor, Joseph Allen. Why was University of North Carolina, Charlotte even mentioned? I will be continuing more of why I'm disturbed by this later.
Hello, my name is Mike Twardowski. I've been a member of the Southern Lehigh School District, living here since about the early 70s. I just want to say that I'm here again, like many of the other folks, because CRT to me is a form of indoctrination for our kids. You may hide it with good intentions, words like equity, diversity, and inclusion, but at the end of the day, it tears communities apart. It teaches kids not to respect each other the way that they should. Telling our kids that they were born full of microaggressions is not a way to help them all get along. You look at where we are in this country, we're ranked 24th in science and math, 24th in science and reading, 39th in math. Pennsylvania is ranked 37th out of the 50 states in educating our kids. Southern Lehigh has roughly 35% of our kids proficient or advanced in math and science. I vote that all this time you're spending talking about critical race, focusing on the education of our children. It's time much better spent. I'll just say my dad passed away in January, and he's up on St. Joe's on the hill buried. He's rolling over in his grave. He was born, raised, and left Poland after World War II to escape communism and things like this indoctrination of our children. I'm sure it's killing him up there, knowing that this kind of thing is going on in the community that he chose to bring his children to. If all of you have a need to do something socially, okay, that's what this is really about, then talk about changing the name Spartans to something else in the meantime until November, when we can vote all of you off the school board. Okay, and you can argue for 6 months whether we ought to be called the rubber duckies or the hedgehogs, but in the meantime, CRT shouldn't be on the table. Focus your time on the education of our children. I thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom Levin, and I've been in the school district since the 70s with Mike. I've graduated from school, I have children who went to the school, and I have grandchildren entering the school. So I'm reading from an article, Newsweek, where this program was already put into place, CRT. It says that a student in a New Jersey prep school responding to the teacher's resignation over school's adoption of any racist policy and curriculum, wrote in a letter that the school's teaching made him feel like worthless scum, undeserving of living. Okay, so he's thinking about suicide. This is not a program that we want to put into our school. The worst thing that can happen here is, somebody committing suicide as a result of what he learned at school. So just, seeing how we could handle it differently. I'm looking at Dr. Wyatt T. Lee, who was basically associated with Dr. Martin Luther King, passed away in 2018. He was part of the executive director of Southern Christian Leadership Council from 1960 to 64. Couldn't get it, he was the man behind the Martin Luther King, and no one may have known King's thoughts better than, or been closer to that him than Dr. Walker. So his interpretation of what we should be doing as compared to CRT is that CRT doesn't really go beyond the skin. The answer is to go deeper than race, deeper than wealth, deeper than ethnic identity, deeper than gender. Teach ourselves to comprehend each person, not as a symbol or of a group, but as a unique and special individual within a common context of shared humanity. To go to the fundamental place where we are all simply moral creatures seeking to create order, beauty, family, and connection to the world that on its own seems to have been too often towards randomness and entropy. So that's the world we should be trying to push for. That's the teaching we should take to our kids. Not something that's going to make them think about suicide at the end of the day. There's a better way to do this, and we should investigate that. You know, suddenly I've been an innovative school for many years. They started a Spanish immersion program. They've been a top flight school in Pennsylvania for a long time. Why don't we investigate ways to make our kids more associated with the Dr. Martin Luther King view of the world in terms of racism? So I got it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nicole, and I have 2 young children in the district. I'm only here to correct some statements that have been made to the board tonight. 1, it is not true that the COVID vaccine is available to anyone who wants them. This vaccine has not been approved for those under 12, like my children. The current outlook is that it will not be approved for those under 12 before the fall semester. All students deserve to be safe when coming to school. When making your decisions, please don't leave those students behind. I trust that the board will make masking decisions based on who has access to the vaccine and based on general data from the health department on whether or not certain age groups have reached herd immunity numbers. It is one thing for the total population to reach herd immunity. It is another thing to take a subset that is ineligible for the vaccine and bring them together in the same building or rooms. This is not to say that I think that seniors should be masked just because kindergartners must be. Please consider the differing populations of the schools when making your decisions. Second, it has also been implied tonight that if a student doesn't feel safe without a mask, then they have the option to wear a mask. Unfortunately, that's not how masking works. When 2 unvaccinated people share a space and only one is masked, the masked person is less protected than if both were masked. Third, it was also stated that the CDC said that young children are not affected by COVID-19. My understanding is that the CDC said to keep masks in schools for all ages and vaccine statuses. Please consider these corrections when making your decisions. Thank you for your time.
Our last speaker is Lisa Bless.
My name is Lisa Bless, and I definitely did not come to these things, and was actually very shocked by the expressions on your faces. As you have a community that is very concerned for the learning of these children, to see how far they've been put behind, and to see that I honestly do not think you guys care. And if you can change my mind, I would like to see that. But I will also say that if I do hear any more of these theories and these surveys coming out without really a full understanding to the community, with no transparency that I've seen so far, I will pull my child out, and I will expect everybody else to pull them out as well. Without children, y'all have no jobs. And that's about it, because I really do not see a concerned face when this community has approached you. And I feel that is very disrespectful.
Moving on to item number 3A, the board minutes. We're going to make a motion, correct, Mr. Audi, to table the minutes because we don't have the majority of board members who were present
That's
the last
correct.
meeting.
That's correct. So if there's a motion to table that, it'll be entertained.
So we need to vote. Do we have to vote on it?
Yes, just you could do a.
Okay. All those in favor?
Right.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Moving on to item number 4, the superintendent report.
Yes, thank you. So tonight, the first item is dealing with the health and wellness policy. And that is, Andrea, if you would come up and explain that. Thank you.
Yes, hi, good evening. This policy was presented to you at the last board meeting, but there was a comment, Mr. Dimick wanted something that was struck out of the policy to be reinserted, and that has been done. I didn't know if there was any other questions or concerns. We're back here for the first reading again.
That's the only change from the prior reading, correct?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Where was that language? Was that language added back?
That language was struck of a previous policy and it's now been added back in.
Great.
Would you like me to find out exactly where?
Nope, I trust you. Thank you.
It's under physical activity as a subheading.
Students in the community shall have access to physical activity facilities outside school hours as per facilities use policy. Very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Do I need to make a motion then? Right, we need to ask for a motion for the minute, for the policy. Yes, can I get a motion, please?
Yes.
To approve the first reading of revised policy 246, student wellness. All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? And I'm in favor, sorry. New at this. Back to you.
Very good, thank you, and thank you for the approval. Tom, this is our new health and safety, updated health and safety policy with masking and social distancing. I'll let you take it from there.
Yes, good evening. So we'll do a presentation tonight, and then the updated health and safety plan for the 21-22 school year is also attached to the Board Docs platform, and that document is complete. So as a review, the American Rescue Plan requires that local education authorities create a health and safety plan, and that plan is submitted per PDE guidance to PDE no later than July 30th. The plan was released approximately 2 weeks ago. And again, as I said, the plan is attached here. You must address mitigation and plans for the coming school year. According to health and safety, according to the American Rescue Plan, it has to be updated at least every 6 months. So this will be an ongoing process that will come to you with updates should they be needed. When we look at what influenced this plan and what it's based off of the template, as I stated, that was shared by PDE on June 4th. Updates to the community, to the Commonwealth's mitigation orders, like the mask order expiring today, existing guidance from the CDC, the Commonwealth's various COVID data tools, and then guidance directly from the St. Luke's University Health Network, who is the district's local health sponsor, and then recommendations directly from the district administration. When we look at this, obviously there is no one size fits all. We've been through this process over the course of the last year. When we're making these determinations, looking at the incoming school year, we're looking at mitigation strategies that are dependent on a number of factors. So something that we've used throughout the process and making determinations is local COVID data and trends, district priorities as was shared. We've stated for several months that a 5-day in-person return is the priority for the district in the fall, and looking at the other additional priorities there. And then obviously, basic understanding of what the community's risk tolerance is. When looking at the data, I did include here a combination of Lehigh and Northampton County data because I think it's important since Lehigh Valley obviously is one contiguous area in amongst the two counties. When you look at the current place holding for Lehigh and Northampton County in the COVID early warning dashboard, both counties are in the best place that they've been since really the start of the pandemic. It puts both counties in a low level of community spread, with the incident rate per 100,000 Lehigh County being approximately 8.4 in the most recent subset of data, and a positivity rate of testing at 1.3%. Northampton County very similar, 7.9 incident rate per 100,000, and a PCR positivity of 1.2. Again, that puts both counties in what would be the low level of community spread, which is the classification that both PDE and the Pennsylvania Department of Health use throughout the school year to make determinations on instructional models. When we're thinking about vaccination and where the counties stand for vaccination, Lehigh County is the 4th best of the 67 counties in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for individuals who are eligible to receive at least one vaccine dose, meaning that eligible individuals, 12 plus, 72% of the population has received that, or a total of 233,646 individuals. Now, when you look at the Commonwealth's data, they use a 10 to 12 metric for age, understanding that 10, 11-year-olds are not eligible to receive the vaccine. So the current population in Lehigh County in the 10 plus classification is 324,639. So again, the 4th best vaccination rate in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Northampton County, just since it's contiguous, I add that as well. They're the 6th best county with 70% vaccination rate in the same area. So you have the Lehigh Valley being represented as the 4th and 6th best vaccination rates according to the Pennsylvania vaccine dashboard. When you're looking at eligible school age groups, again, as I said, Pennsylvania refers to this through a 10 and 14 classification, a 15 and 19, and you can see the data there approaching close to 20,000 individuals, just about 15,000 individuals in Lehigh County, so a very high vaccination rate as of Friday. When we're thinking about this plan, there's a couple things that really need to be emphasized. At this point, as of today, June 28th, any individual in Lehigh or Northampton County or the contiguous Lehigh Valley who is 12 plus that has an interest in becoming vaccinated has more than a wealth of opportunities to complete that process. Again, that is an option that is not required by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, nor is it required by Southern Lehigh. That being said, we'll obviously continue to progress toward a day-to-day operation that as closely mirrors the pre-pandemic school operation as possible. And as we've said in the past, we're looking at a face-to-face 5-person a day in-person instruction, and the Spartan Academy, which we shared information about several weeks ago, which would be the remote option through a contracted provider. As I stated, the plan itself is attached, and that plan is completed through the PDE recommended form. I did provide some just basic highlights in here. In terms of masking, the plan that was put forth to the board for consideration last week, which is up for vote today, states that effective as of today, that masks would no longer be required for activities occurring indoors or outdoors. Per our conversations with the St. Luke's University Health Network, they believe that it was very important to put a statement that said that unvaccinated individuals are encouraged to continue to wear masks to protect themselves. However, again, as I said, it is not required for indoor or outdoor activities. In terms of social distancing, based on our conversations throughout this school year and based on our interpretation of what the data looks like, we will not be giving a direct figure for social distancing in the classroom. So we just have explained here, and this is a combination of discussions within the admin team and within our community health providers. Configurations of classroom furniture will be done in a manner that promotes in-person instruction, but with the greatest distancing that is feasible or appropriate in those situations. And as I said here, the district will continue to encourage eligible students and staff to be vaccinated. And to the point that was made earlier, there is not a ton of clarity should vaccinations be available for under 12-year-old individuals at this time. There is a bit of question if that even will happen in the fall as well. So more clarity will come over time, and that's the key with that. But the district has continued to maintain vaccination resources on the website should individuals be interested. When we're thinking about this plan's genesis and evolution throughout this process, we do have requirement guidelines to at least review the plan over the course of time, and we will fulfill those requirements and we'll look at updated guidelines. That's outlined here, but any modification would obviously come to the board for approval, and that's a part of the process as well. And we would continue to interweave the community health partners that we have with St. Luke's University Health Network in that process. The plan itself, again, is attached, and the form with which the plan is being used is one that is directly developed from the Pennsylvania Department of Health, or Department of Education, excuse me. Any questions?
So we need to do the motion first, or do we do the questions first? Motion, right? Right, so can I get a motion to approve the 2021-22 Southern Lehigh District Health and Safety Plan?
Second.
Any questions and comments?
I have a clarification question. Sorry. So this plan is definitely not as comprehensive as the last one that we approved. So is that one, once we approve this, kind of antiquated, so we don't default back to looking at county guidelines or numbers for any changes in policies or procedures?
It is our intention that should this be approved, this replaces the current plans, and this plan would be forward. This is what is the requests are. When you look at the data, again, the district has not had a reported case of COVID since May 18th. So we're over a month since the last reported case. Not that we have a ton of students in the buildings, but we did have for 3 weeks' time, full gamut of school population with no reported cases. And we do have more students in the building right now than we have really in any summer during my tenure in the district as well, with, again, no reported cases. So this is what the requirement is in planning. There would have to be some additional, general guidelines that will be provided to nurses and so on, but this is what the plan would look like.
Okay, so then for community members who are looking to plan for the fall, under this current plan that we're looking to propose, it's 5 days, no masking requirements.
Correct, masking would be optional.
I have a quick question. Dr. I noticed on the members of the review team, there were no longer any board members on it. Is that correct?
That is correct. There were no requirements for a pandemic review team under this plan. So because of the turnaround, reality of this, we did not continue to engage the pandemic team. Rather, we engaged the entire school district administration, and then had Dr. Gibson, our school physician, and then Dr. Reed and Dr. Jari from St. Luke's as well, complete review of the document.
Okay.
Mr. Dibble?
On your last point, Mr. Roof, the pandemic team then going forward, is that more or less sort of a model that we used last year and won't be used going forward, or what is the status of the pandemic team?
In conversations with Dr. Mussolini, we decided to go forward with an administrative oversight and then use the health and safety strengths of the community partner at St. Luke's and the other events there. And we would continue through our district administrative process. So that team would not meet anymore.
And is that being then replaced by, I guess the way I viewed the pandemic team throughout most of last year was they sort of helped develop the plans as it went along. In this case, am I correct in assuming that this current plan that we're going to vote on this evening, while it obviously, as any plan, can be modified, that this would be the plan going into the fall unless a new plan is proposed and voted on? Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay. Because I think just that it was a much more fluid situation throughout last year, but that was more of a sort of week to week, month to month. The pandemic team was providing guidance and sort of developing the plans there. I mean, and so that's not necessarily the model we'll be following going forward. We'll be approving plans, and the plans will be implemented until new plans are agreed upon.
Yes, so there is that requirement to do a 6-month review. There could be additional reviews with major changes, is the way the American Rescue Plan reads. That being said, in conversations at the Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit 21 Emergency Preparedness Council, which is essentially the staffs that are reviewing these plans for each of the districts. There was a lot of consensus that generally these plans will look very similar district to district in this county. There are certain resources in Lehigh County that we do not have that other counties do. Example being the County Municipal Health Department, we do not have those, whereas counties to our south all have county health departments. So we still have to rely on relationships that we have with the Pennsylvania Department of Health and so on, because that resource is not available to us. Where both Allentown and Bethlehem both have a municipal health department, but generally, these plans are going to be pretty consistent in the county, and then this team that is listed in here would meet, and we would continue to build on the relationship we have with St. Luke's for the review of the plans and that component.
Okay, great, thank you. What is, and if you can't answer this yet, that's fine. I assume this also affects transportation, and would the masking requirements be lifted for transportation? How do we, and if you don't have a real great idea on how busing and whatnot would work, but for sports, throughout the fall or in the spring, even now, I guess masking though is not required in any kind of transportation, perhaps some type of distancing would be.
So our plan right now, actually, and Mrs. Noel may be able to speak to this, we're likely going to still just plan buses at 2 per seat, because we're able to do it. And in the past, we've had concerns from the community about the bus being overcrowded. Generally, the secondary bus routes are much, there's more space in secondary bus routes than there is in the elementary bus routes. However, as we've shared in the past, we do plan every single student to have busing for emergency purposes. So right now, our plan is 2 students per seat would be the plan. That was not the case in terms of, busing is a difficult thing to crack, because a lot of people chose this year to still drive their students to school. But we still have to plan in the event of emergency that we're able to transport every person home and build the routes around that process.
What, in the distancing portion of the plan, especially at the elementary class level, which I assume it includes do you include the IS in elementary? Or?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There was quite a bit of disruption to the cafeteria and the gymnasium. So obviously how do you envision, so that's a little less clear under this wording in my mind, what would the impact of, sort of configuration of classroom furniture in a manner that appropriately promotes in-person instruction? But in your mind, would this allow us to go back to a cafeteria in about the way it was pre-pandemic, or?
It should, yes.
Okay. And so when I read that, what I would envision is that you attempt to space within a classroom, but there is no set spacing as there was last year. And do we think that would impact the ability to have, especially at the elementary level, how they tend to have a reading area sometimes in the back of the classroom, or a library area?
We're anticipating putting the classrooms back to there. Now, there may be some furniture changes.
Right.
What we did find is some classrooms who previously had certain types of furniture, found that they like to have desks, rather than having the previous furniture that they had, so on and so forth.
Great. One last, the elementary grades will not, I tend to agree with you. It doesn't look likely that there'll be vaccines eligible for our elementary grade students by the fall. It does say that unvaccinated individuals are encouraged to wear a mask to protect themselves. I wouldn't want to see us necessarily, that would mean every elementary student.
It's still an optional choice.
Right. So when we say we're going to encourage, if you encourage an elementary school student from a teacher, that might be one thing. If we want to encourage families to think about that, is that what we mean by that?
I believe it's more from the plan perspective. We're no intention, we have not throughout the year. Our emphasis toward the staff throughout the year, and I know the building level's emphasis for the staff was to be gentle reminders. There was no punitive action toward anyone in any situation, and there never would be. It's more about making sure that we're protecting anyone that chooses to do that, and making sure that everybody's options are open to them.
Right. Thank you for the presentation. I don't have any other questions.
I just want to summarize a few things to make sure I'm tracking here. So across all levels of education, masking is optional.
Correct.
In regards to social distancing, the way I read this is that the setup of the room, the setup will take precedent for the best instructional setting, less so to any care about social distancing.
Yeah, we're not going to assign a specific metric. So, we had the conversations whether it was 3 or 6 or what it's going to be for in-person instruction.
And vaccinations, and I would agree, based upon the surveillance data coming out, it's unlikely that we're going to see 12 and under. But that said, it's masking optional. And while encouraged, it's not mandated in any way, shape, or form. It's simply a choice.
Yes.
Just like anything at this point, it is a choice that people will have. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Smith? Dr. Smith, sorry.
I just have one other question. Could you clarify the link between the ESSER funds and compliance with any mandates? Because we've had some comments about that, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
So what was stated earlier is what was reported by Noel Ortega, the acting secretary, that these reports will be given to them and they will warehouse them. In terms of the CDC guidance, what we discussed, if you can remember, at the CDC update in April, we talked about the idea that the CDC guidance for schools is generally created as a catch-all for all common denominators. And if you go back to that guidance, you remember I shared with you that they specifically left out that school-based automatic ventilation was left out of the first set of April guidance. That was done purposely because it would discredit essentially the large majority of urban schools from ever opening, because large amount of urban schools in the United States don't have automated ventilation systems. So therefore, in the CDC guidance, it said that you should open your window, which would be counter to everything that was happening with the ventilation systems in Southern Lehigh, which were up to ASHRAE standards and were mechanically ventilating the air. So because of that, there are going to be potential situations where what's in the CDC guidance is not the option that is best for the organization. And that example of the mechanical ventilation is a good example of what the guidance stated, which wasn't necessarily the best practice because we had mechanical ventilation in each of the buildings. But had we followed the CDC guidance, would have been opening all over windows.
I guess my final question is just more of a confirmation that all of this was fully vetted and approved through our health partners at St. Luke's, correct? And they fully approved the masking optional.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Seeing no other questions or comments, we're ready for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? No abstentions, so the motion passes. Moving on to item 5, curriculum, student and staff activities. 5A is the AP United States motion to approve the new planned course with instructional resources for AP United States government and politics.
Second.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'd like to vote. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Moving on to item 5B. Need a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with CLIU 21 to act as the fiscal lead for Title III for the 21-22 school year. Questions or comments? Okay, I would like to vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Moving on to item 6A, school-based. Yes, can you take that together? Any objections to taking 6A and B together? Seeing none. Sure. Absolutely. Yes, so we'll do 6A first. A motion to approve the agreement between Lehigh Valley Hospital and Southern Lehigh School District on school-based behavioral health services for the Southern Lehigh High School, middle school, and intermediate school through June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Questions and comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Moving on to 6B, the telehealth, this is a motion to approve the telehealth agreement between Lehigh Valley Hospital and Southern Lehigh High School District through June 30th, 2020. Questions and comments?
Ms. Buckman, could you explain why we're doing a telehealth contract? Because we had talked last year about how important face-to-face is for these types of services.
Correct, and that is still our priority. This may apply to, one gives us always the option for students, but two, over the summer months, if students still want to connect with the counselor, they have the option to do that.
So I appreciate that, but as I read it, it's for all 35 hours, contracted hours to be offered telehealth, not with the option of in-person.
Again, it's really in case we need it during the school year, like we experienced this year, but our goal is to have in-person services.
My understanding from the question that I had earlier today too is that this is an addendum to the considered more of an addendum. So we have the in-person services agreement is kind of the baseline, and this is an addendum that creates an option.
So it's not an additional 35 hours, it's 35 hours as needed when in-person is not available.
So we're going to be the model that you just approved is going to be for a person for 35 hours devoted to the high school. And then the second person, as we shared in April during the workshop, is split between the middle school and now GPLIS.
Okay, so that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. We have nothing under section 7. Does anyone oppose taking 8A through C together? Can I get a motion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. 10A, actually, Mr. Audi, the motion that you had, the amendment to the agenda that we're going to do in the procedures, we do it now as part of human resources first. So the first thing we're going to do before we move on to 10A through E is an amendment to the agenda. And it's a motion in order to allow administration to appoint personnel between this board meeting and the next board meeting being held in August with retroactive board approval at the August meeting. This is necessary to, I'm trying to read the writing. This is necessary to all employees to serve out their terms at the employee's current district. So I need a motion. Questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. Dr. Mussolini, the idea here is that we will still have some board presence in the interview process for some of these critical positions. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, it is.
Yep. So I think that's important, but I think as long as we have some input there and know what's going on, I think it's critical to allow us to stay competitive and get people in position as quickly as possible. I think it's a good move. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. So section 10, I think we have to take individually, correct? 10A. 10A, Act 93, with great dismay and sadness, we have administrative employee resignations, Mr. Sam Hafner and Ms. Jen Brinson. Their resignations will be effective in August 13th and July 26th consecutively. And I need a motion. I don't know if there's questions or comments. I'll offer a comment of, we're very sad to see Mr. Hafner, the icon of Liberty Bell, and Ms. Brinson moving on to other positions. We will miss them tremendously at the district. They've served us with great dedication. Mr. Hafner's been here for All I remember is Mr. Hafner showing up at my front door when my first grader was starting school, and he would go around and introduce himself to every family in the district that was starting back in the day. So I have fond memories and wish both of them well in their new endeavors. Moving on then. Oh, we have to vote. I don't want to vote on it. All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Then should we take 10B through E together? Anyone opposed? Okay. We can have a vote for 10A through 10E. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. We have nothing in 11, other business communications. 13, new business. 14, we have some information only. We have 14A and B. These are requests for professional conferences, information only, information for review, and the Lehigh University School Psychology Program. Any questions or comments on either of those items? Those are non-voting items. So we can move on to section 15. That's our second visitor comment session. So the first person signed in to speak for the second session is Maria Alt.
Mrs. Evanson informed the Southern Lehigh community at the last school board meeting, June 14, that they are moving forward with Dr. Allen's DEI proposal by letting the community know that Dr. Allen's report from the climate survey is due by June 30th, and that report will be shared with the board and administration. Based on the results of the data, we'll determine the module training. There are so many problems with the climate survey, but before even doing that, this whole issue is about equity, and Southern Lehigh never even told the community what equity is. Dr. Allen's diversity, equity, and inclusion proposal does not define what equity is. Mrs. Evanson stated in the community updated email dated April 23rd that the district is committed to examining issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion and is seeking feedback as it relates to equity, and that the feedback from the survey will help to determine how to move forward to ensure that Southern Lehigh meeting the unique needs of every student. Mrs. Evanson never defined what equity is. Parents were not made aware that the climate survey was going to be given to the students in school, and many kids that were given the survey in school did not know it was optional and thus felt forced to take it. This is not right at all. Some of the problems with the survey are: 1, if the survey is anonymous, how will Southern Lehigh evaluate the reliability of the results? 2, Evanson told the community in her April 23rd email that the survey would be optional and anonymous, but students felt forced to take the survey, and the students took the survey in Google Forms. The students' name is associated with the computers that they are working on, so was their survey anonymous? 3, this survey can be taken multiple times, including individuals who feel most strongly about equity, therefore causing misrepresentation of our Southern Lehigh district. 4, will the raw data results be available to the community? Mrs. Evanson mentioned at the last meeting that the results will be shared with the board and administration, but she never mentioned that the results will be shared with the community. 5, there are no controls on who responds and how many times they respond. How can the results be objectively evaluated? 6, the very first question is for gender identity. 2 of the options are non-binary and other. What is non-binary? What is other? Why is it important to know the gender of a person? At a time when students are trying to find their identity, it seems that by asking this question, it may further confuse the student and start having them second guess in which gender they are. 7, for the second question of this survey, a person can only choose one race, and there are 6 race options. Why do you feel the need to identify a person according to their race? In addition, this question is not fair to biracial and multiracial individuals such as myself and my daughters. How can you make a biracial or multiracial person choose only one answer? This is not right at all, and this causes the data to be inaccurate. There are so many more more problems with a survey that cannot be covered in just 3 minutes. In conclusion, why would we base policy decisions and actions on an unscientific survey that is likely to produce unreliable results?
This is a continuation of why I am disturbed by what has taken place with this diversity proposal. In regard to the climate survey, Kathleen Edison said this climate survey comes from the U.S. Department of Education. When I asked the school board who developed this survey, I was told Joseph Allen. And in my response to my right to know on May 14th, 2021, the school district said to call the U.S. Department of Education and provided a phone number to AIR.org help desk, who could not provide a U.S. Department of Education contact. So who is AIR.org? Well, they are one of the world's largest behavioral and social science research and evaluation organizations. AIR's mission is to generate and use rigorous evidence that contributes to a better, more equitable world. AIR.org, well, so I question, really? Sounds like AIR.org is generating their own reasons to implement critical race theory, a divisive global agenda. AIR.org will not return my phone calls. Why? How many people have taken a survey? Who is assessing the results? When will the results be provided? After looking at the survey, I could not answer it myself because I did not know what certain questions meant, such as, do I consider myself non-binary? I was told parents found out about the survey because a student had asked their parents, what is non-binary? Why were parents not informed? Another question asked, all students at my child's school are treated the same regardless of whether their parents are rich or poor. Is this not encouraging to children to form a prejudice of others? In addition to being inappropriate, how can you ask this of children when the school district does not have data on the income of the school district population? To date, I have received no concise answers for my inquiries about this diversity program from the school district. No one knows Joseph Allen's affiliation with the United States education system. No one has provided physical documents to provide evidence of race issues. No one knows what will be taught to whom and when. And we have gone from an assessment to a 3-year training program before anyone has had time to be informed or to provide input. A federal Title II funding application for this diversity program does not exist. This program appears to have been swept in through the back door and under the radar. Based on the fact that no one knows from whom or where the origin of this program began, parents and community have been out of sort due to COVID, and the school district leadership is now in transition. Parents and community ought to demand a stop to this program until there is full transparency so that informed, educated decisions can be made. As I've said in many emails to the school board, we are one nation under God, indivisible.
To preface my remarks, I want to say that I have respect for all members of the school board. And I know that you give of your time freely and your talents, and it is appreciated even in the midst of serious disagreement. CRT is based upon the assumption that we are a racist country. Recently, there was a rare moment of bipartisan agreement concerning race in America. In the Republican response to President Biden's address to Congress, Senator Tim Scott, a Republican black man from South Carolina, avowed that America is not a racist country. Within 2 days, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris affirmed, I don't think America is a racist country. In the last 70 years, we have integrated under our U.S. Armed Forces under Harry Truman. In 1954, the Supreme Court ruled in Brown versus Board of Education that racial segregation in schools was unconstitutional. and President Dwight D. Eisenhower enforced it in Little Rock in 1957. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech in 1963. In 1965, civil rights icon John Lewis, as a young black man, helped to lead the Selma to Montgomery marches, and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 1965 ended Jim Crow laws. In 2008, a black man, Barack Obama, was elected president of the United States 2 times, with the majority of the white vote. Are there still racists in our country? Of course, but they are fewer in number than ever before. People of color have more opportunity in our country than ever. A growing black middle class and professional class is testament to that. America is still considered a land of opportunity, which is why so many people around the world want to live here. There has never been a time in our country's history that we are less racist. In a speech in Dallas in 1966, Reverend King said that separate would never be equal and called for integration. However, CRT advocates a new form of segregation. At Rice University, CRT advocates designated spaces for black groups only. According to the National Association of Scholars, scores of colleges and universities, and yes, even high schools, allow similar segregated centers. And you can forget free speech with CRT. If you disagree with the CRT program, it is proof of, this is their language, it is proof of white fragility, unconscious bias, or internalized white supremacy. If you dissent, you must remain silent and accept your complicity in white supremacy. Dr. Mussolini, I don't know you, but I desire to give you the benefit of the doubt. This community is not interested in teaching 5-year-old children that they are oppressors. We are not interested in telling children that they have implicit bias and are hopelessly racist. We are not interested in separating children by the color of their skin.
I'm going to have to ask you to respect the time limit,
Terminate the
Mr.
contract
Durham.
with Joseph Allen immediately and look for other ways to increase understanding among different ethnic groups. I've stated before, let's
I'm
get
going to ask you
concerned
one
parents,
last time, please,
students,
respectfully,
and
Mr.
members from
Durham.
the faith
Sir,
community together
will you please follow the rules?
to work on the issues
You
right now.
you have your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Speaker. I'm sorry, I skipped over. I believe I skipped over Carrie Gutman.
You know, it's kind of interesting over the course of this past year with everything that the country itself has gone through. Not to mention our community, our kids, our school district. November, we had the election. The country was completely divided. I honestly didn't think it would come back together anytime soon. Then CRT reared its ugly head with DEI and all these other nifty little code words that we're using for it. And then you saw parents from every walk of life, every color, every religion, and every political background rally together from coast to coast to form groups. People who would never talk to other people in their lives if this hadn't come about. Because the CRT, DEI, has attacked our children. You are part of that. And nothing fires parents up more than coming after their kids. So the only thing that has happened here, as you have united a country to fight against this nonsense, states have banned it. It's against the law. Pennsylvania has legislature in the House right now, HR 1532, to stop this, to stop all of this. You need to stop it now. You need to put an end to this Dr. Allen nonsense. Don't tell me you can't walk it back. All it requires is a vote, a yes and a 2.
concern over students being targeted, demeaned, or having suicidal thoughts. I agree with them. That is very concerning. No students should be targeted or demeaned, and their well-being should be nurtured so that suicide is not a consideration. Sadly, to me, those statements from others seem to only focus on the potential future instances of such concerns happening with certain groups and ignore the fact that these concerns are happening now with other groups. There are plenty of statistics out there about suicide rates among currently marginalized groups. This is existing. This is already happening. Please continue the DEI training of teachers and staff so that all students feel safe and supported by their staff. I trust that you will ensure that this employee development will not result in a culture that changes targets from one set of groups to another. I trust that the goal is to have a culture that eliminates having any targets, instead cultivating unity. Thank you for your consideration.
I believe that concludes our visitor comment portion for the second section of visitor comments. I believe we have no need for an executive session following the meeting. So can I have a motion to adjourn? All in favor? I don't think anybody's opposed. That concludes our meeting.